over defunding Planned Parenthood?
Well, of course I am.
We're all Kansans now. Joining us now is Democratic Congresswoman Diana DeGette from the great state of Colorado. Congresswoman DeGette, thank you very much for joining us on this very busy and news-packed night.
Hi, Rachel.
Let me ask you about this ongoing standoff. John Boehner did not seem eager to talk about it. The Democrats who are involved in these negotiations said over and over and over again that they had agreed on a number, but they could not agree on this issue of Planned Parenthood. What do you make about the dispute over that?
Well, you know, it's not just Planned Parenthood. It's all Title X money. So it's all the money for family planning and cancer screening and women's wellness visits in the federal budget. And they don't deny that they're holding the entire budget. They're willing to shut down the government over these extreme right-wing writers. And the main one seems to be directed at the Title X funding and Planned Parenthood. So what I think is if John Boehner really doesn't want to shut down the government, he really wants to come to an agreement, just take those writers off the table. Just say right now, you know, we're going to talk about these issues later. Let's talk about the money. Let's talk about how we can avoid shutting down the federal government and costing 800,000 jobs.
Congresswoman DeGette, we have just received word from NBC's Chuck Todd. He's reporting just in the last couple of minutes that there is an existing deal now. Now what needs to happen is everybody needs to review it. The first group that is expected to review it is the House Republican caucus that will be meeting in about 25 minutes to start going over this deal. Do you expect that at the end of this process there will be a deal, or do you think that the government shutdown is actually a goal? It's actually a feature and not a bug at this point, and that Republicans just want to shut down?
Well, I think there are some Republicans that want to shut it down. I think the Tea Party activists do want to shut it down. But I think that there's a desire on everybody's part to keep the government open, military pay for the troops, the passports that you talked about, all of the issues that you talked about. But what I'm hearing is that if there is a deal tonight, it's probably only a 72-hour deal. So we're going to still have to keep fighting over these writers all weekend long. You know something, Rachel? This is only part of the assault against women's health that we've seen all year long. The very first bill that we voted on in January was a bill to repeal the health care measure, right? Well, what this did was it gave a lot of women's health and it gave gender equity in health care. And then we've been voting on expanding restrictions on abortion, expanding restrictions on birth control and pap smears and breast cancer screening. So, you know, a lot of us really see this as sort of an assault on women's health, period.
Why do you think that is so central to these politics? Again, we're hearing now from NBC's Chuck Todd that there is a deal that all sides are reviewing, starting with House Republicans meeting at 9:45 to review it. You've said that you've heard that if there is a deal, it's likely to be a very short-term deal, something like a 72-hour deal. If that's true, we're right back here essentially after the weekend having this same fight again. Would you expect at that point that these social issues, that these women's health issues, even that the powers of the Environmental Protection Agency, these types of issues would be back at the center of the fight?
I would expect that this is not going to end. We've been having this fight since the Republican majority took over in the House. And it's a hard right agenda with these writers. These writers don't have anything to do with cutting the federal budget deficit. And if the Republicans were really interested in coming to an agreement, which is what, frankly, representative government is supposed to do, they would sit down and talk about how we can do a 6-month budget, a continuing resolution, that will fund the government for 6 months, that will be fiscally responsible, that will keep our government open, and that will begin to bring our budget into control and take away all of these right-wing philosophical agenda items. We don't need to be talking about that right now.
In terms of the overall negotiations here, it seems to me that the Democrats have given away a ton, $38 billion less than was in the president's budget request, because Republicans have insisted on it. But that also means that the Democrats have offered a lot. Offering a $38 billion cut is a huge, huge giveaway by the Democrats. Are they getting anything from Republicans in return? Are Republicans giving up anything that they otherwise thought they were going to be able to hold on to in exchange for this giant amount of of money that they've gotten out of the Democrats.
You know, here's the problem is these freshman Republicans, a lot who are aligned with the Tea Party, don't think they should have to compromise at all. And what they want to do is gut the government. When you ask the citizens of America, they say, look, we want to have a balanced budget. We want to try to have fiscal sanity. But when you talk to them about the extent of the cuts that these Tea Party adherents want, it would just gut our government. And what's worse, it would cost hundreds of thousands of jobs. And really, we need to be talking about putting our fiscal house in order, but at the same time creating jobs. And so you know, really all of these other issues and these drastic cuts, they should be off the table. We should sit down in a bipartisan way and talk about how to bring our system into check. This is why a lot of people like me are reserving judgment on the final agreement, because we tend to be fiscal moderates. We want to balance our budget, but we want to see exactly where these cuts are going to come. The cuts need to be shared by everybody. The cuts need to be shared by the oil and gas companies that had record profits again last year, by large agricultural conglomerates. They need to be shared by the Defense Department, and every part of our budget needs to share these cuts. They can't just be on the middle class.
Colorado's Democratic Congresswoman Diana DeGette, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I imagine it's going to be a late and busy night for you, so I really appreciate the time.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you, Rachel.